You weren't lying when you promised Allah that it was the last time. That's what makes it hurt so much. Because if the promise was fake, the answer would be simple. But it wasn't fake. You truly did mean it, and you felt it in your chest. Maybe your eyes were wet, maybe the room was dark, maybe the regret was still fresh. And in that moment, you said it again. Ya Allah, I'm done. I swear this was the last time. And for a day, maybe even a few days, maybe even a week, you were. So why didn't it last? Why does a promise that feels so real at night disappear the moment the craving comes back? That's what this video is about. Not because you don't love Allah, but because that promise was missing three things. The worst part wasn't the sin, it was the seconds after. Because the relapse usually doesn't arrive like some dramatic movie scene, it comes quietly. A slow night, a little boredom, a little scrolling, a little tiredness, a moment where you're alone and not really paying attention. And then suddenly you realize it already happened. And now you're sitting there with that heavy feeling in your chest because you didn't just break a habit. In your heart, you broke a promise to yourself, to Allah. And that specific weight is different. It's not regular guilt. It's not just, I made a mistake. It's the feeling of looking up and not being able to meet His gaze. And that moment really does matter. Because for a lot of people, the real damage doesn't happen before the relapse, it happens after. Here's what you got wrong about that night. You think you broke the promise because your faith was weak, because you didn't want it badly enough, because you're fake, because if you really loved Allah, you would have stopped by now. So what do? You promise harder, you make the words heavier, you say, this time I really mean it. Maybe you even swear on it, but then the same thing happens again, and now the evidence starts stacking up in your mind. Maybe something is wrong with me. But willpower alone was never enough to carry that promise. What you're fighting is not just a bad decision, it's a craving wave. Your brain has learned when to send it. It knows the schedule, it knows the room, it knows the emotion, it knows the tired version of you that shows up late at night with no plan. Just know that the wave rises, it peaks, and if you don't feed it, it passes. Usually in minutes. But here's the problem. This whole time you've been standing in front of the wave with only one strategy. I hope that I'm strong enough this time. And to be quite honest, that is not a strategy. That is standing in the ocean and hoping that the water splits before you. You weren't failing a test of how much you love Allah. You were facing a wave with no plan for what to do when it hit. But the wave is not the only thing keeping you stuck. This is, so listen closely. You break the promise, then the shame comes in like a flood. You're a hypocrite. You're disgusting. How dare you raise your hands to him again? How many times are you going to ask forgiveness for the same thing? And because the shame sounds religious, you believe it. You pull back from prayer because you feel too dirty to stand on the mat. You delay making dua because you feel embarrassed to speak to Allah. You go quiet, you hide, and here's the trap. Hiding does not shrink shame, it feeds it. Being alone in the dark with that feeling is the exact condition the next relapse grows in. Shame tells you to run from Allah, but running from Allah is the one thing that guarantees you to stay weak. Guilt says, I did something wrong, I need to return. Shame says, I am wrong, I should disappear. One brings you back to Allah, the other pushes you into the same darkness that hurt you the first time. So no, the shame is not helping you. It just feels like guilt doing its job, but it may actually be the thing pulling you back under. So if promising harder doesn't work, what does? First, you need to understand what your promise was doing. Promise says, I will not. And there is sincerity in that. There is good in that. You should want to stop. You should hate the sin. You should resolve not to return to it. But if the entire system is just a promise, then all the weight is on your perfect future self. And the moment you slip up, the whole thing collapses. The contract that you made feels void, the streak is gone, and now you're not just someone who fell, you're someone who broke his word, and that framing was never going to save you. Because Islam does not only give you a promise, it gives you a return. And that is what tawbah is. Tawbah is not casual. Tawbah is not pretending the sin doesn't matter. Tawbah means you turn away sincerely. You regret it. You stop. You intend not to go back. But Tawbah does not tell you to despair if you fall again. It does not say come back only if this was your final relapse. It says return. And it says that again and again and again. Because Tawbah was not built for people who never slipped. It was built for the moment after the slip, when shame tells you to stay down and Allah is still calling for you back. The promise made you the judge of your own case, handing down a guilty verdict every time. Tawbah takes you out of that courtroom entirely and points you toward a door that was never locked. You don't need a louder promise, you just need to keep returning. And here's the part shame never lets you hear clearly. The door is not just unlocked, you are actually invited through it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Indeed, it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful. Listen to the words, not, O perfect servants, not, O servants who only fell once, not, O servants who fix themselves before coming back. He says, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves. That is the person being called, the one who crossed the line, the person who feels ashamed, the person who thinks he has gone too far. And you know what Allah tells that person? Do not lose hope in my mercy. That ache you feel after falling is not proof that you're fake. It may be proof that something in you still wants to come home. For a dead heart does not care that it is distant, but you care. That pain is not the end of your faith. It may be the part of your faith still fighting for you. So, what do you do when the wave comes again? Because believe me, it will come again. Not because you're doomed, but because healing means learning how to meet the same moment differently. So when the wave comes, don't debate with it in the dark. Stand up, leave the room, change your state, make wudu, put the phone somewhere else, give the craving 10 minutes without feeding it. Not because 10 minutes makes you perfect, but because 10 minutes is usually long enough for that wave to pass, and long enough for you to remember who you are. The goal is not to build a promise so strong that you never feel the temptation again. The goal is to build a return so familiar that even when you fall, you do not disappear. You come back faster, you pray sooner, you make tawbah before shame gets comfortable. You stop letting the moment after become the beginning of another spiral. That is where the battle changes. Not only before the sin, after. The moment after is where shame either buries you or tawbah brings you home. So stop trying to make a promise strong enough to never break. Make a return you refuse to abandon. If today you broke something you swore you would protect, the door is still open. It was always open. That's the whole point of this video. Turn back, make wudu, pray, ask for forgiveness. Take the next clean step. Not tomorrow, not after you feel worthy. Do it right now. That is why my team and I built Hayaa. Not to replace tawbah, but to be a companion in the moment after, when shame tells you to disappear and you need help finding the way back. We also have a Discord community for those interested, link in the bio. The app is secondary, the door is the main point. Begin again, today's day one. Jazakallah.